Hi, I'm Brianna Motzkus with the Fabric Patch in Ephrata, Washington, and today we are going to do our class 2 of our Sunshine Block of the Month quilt, talking all about fusible applique. Okay, so there's a few things we need before we get started. So first of all, hopefully you still know where all of your pattern pieces are, because inside your pattern, for every block, you're going to have a template piece of paper, full size, and you're also going to have what they call the placement guide. So we're going to be using both of those for this class. And then some other things, the other thing in your kit besides your border fabric, your background, your strips, everything that was part of the block assembly, you have a bunch of yardage pieces. I think some 1/4 yard cuts and some 1/8 yard cuts of other fabric. This fabric is going to be used to make your appliques. So make sure you have those. You need some Steam-A-Seam or Heat and Bond, whatever your local store purchases, or we do have some linked below if you need some Steam-A-Seam. It is a double-sided fusible, perfect for and made specifically for fusible applique. A really nice pair of scissors. These are Karen K. Buckley's scissors. She has the purple handled ones that Mom really likes, are the serrated ones, which are super, super nice. These are just another a style of hers that I like. It has a really large opening, both left or right handing, depending on what your dominant hand is, and it has a nice short blade for easy control for cutting out the petals of our flower and the leaves. You also will be tracing on our design to the Steam-A-Seam using a lead pencil. Lead pencil is the best way to go. You can do a mechanical lead pencil if you want, but I like the good old number 2 school pencil. It works the best. The reason you would rather do a lead pencil versus something that's more ink or like a friction pen is because the fusible is bumpy. So the lead just glides over all of those little glue bumps super nice, leaving a nice even layer of traced pencil lead, so you know where you're cutting. A pen does a whole lot of jump skipping and off the track. So trust me when I say a lead pencil. You're also going to need a Teflon pressing sheet. I'll show you that later. That's to protect your ironing surface as well as your iron. If things go a little south and we get sticky stuff on our iron, Iron Clean will clean it off in a second. I will even demonstrate for you why you would use this and when you would use this. We're also going to use a light box. You don't necessarily have to. It might be a little splurge thing for you if you really enjoy applique, but it just shows, it's going to brighten up your dark lines to trace onto your Steam-A-Seam, so you don't have to worry about squinting, standing up at the bright window, and making sure you're in peak hours to be able to use your window as a light box. So I have my light box. So I'm going to clean up my table and get set up, and I'm going to show you how to trace your template pieces onto your Steam-A-Seam. Alright, so what we have is the light box. The light box that we sell in our store and online is just this little, I think he's like 9x12 USB powered light box. Super nice. Our template paper, whether you're using block 1 or 2 or 3, it doesn't matter, just one template paper, and your Steam-A-Seam. Now I think the pattern calls for like 10 yards of Steam-A-Seam. It really doesn't matter what you start with. If you have some in your stash because you just haven't made it to the local quilt shop or still waiting for your order, no worries, just get a little stick out, and then your lead pencil. That's all we're going to need. Okay, the first thing we're going to do is turn on our handy dandy light box here, and you can see how it's glowing. You can really see on the sides of here that you can see that mine is on. What again it's going to do is it's going to really illuminate our drawings for you. What's really cool about this pattern in particular, and I have to say a lot of patterns that are all about fusible applique, they've already reversed this applique for us. And then what we're going to do is we're going to put our Steam-A-Seam on top of it. So my little trick for using Steam-A-Seam is I always go ahead and get up to it and I decide I'm going to rip off. I don't really rip off a piece. I just want to see. So I can see that on this left side, the glue is sticking to this side and not to this side. So the part that is really sticking to the glue is the right side up. And all of this can be different. So in my case, it's also where the grid is, which is super cool. And then, I don't know if you guys can see my lines or not. Let me see if I can adjust the camera for you. There we go. We had to do some mood lighting here in the studio. Okay, so now that you can see, I have my light box, my template paper, and my steam seam on top. Now what we're going to do is we're just going to trace everybody out. Now what's important is you can trace this out just like this if you want to. You don't have to move things around. If you want to move things around to make sure you have less waste, absolutely go for it. In my case, I feel like I like that it's kind of laid out in groupings. It'll make it easier for me to make sure I'm putting each piece where they're supposed to be. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to take our lead pencil and all we're doing is tracing the lines. It doesn't have to be super perfect. I mean, if you get off the line a little bit, it's not a huge deal. Keep in mind, this is a very organic applique. So it's a dragonfly, leaves, and petals. So if they're a little extra wobbly, even when you're cutting them out, it's not going to be like, oh my gosh, what is that? That can't be a flower. So we're going to trace everything, and also make sure you can can you see that there's also all of the pieces have a letter and a number. Make sure that transfers to your drawing. So P1, this one is P2. It will make it easier in multiple ways to make sure that these little appliques are being fused to the correct piece of fabric, as well as these particular appliques being fused in the right order when we actually fuse it to our block. So that's all we're going to do for the moment. We're going to do a whole bunch of tracing. I'm going to trace all of this block 1 template, and then I'll come back and I'll show you the next step on getting this onto the fabric, and then shortly getting it onto the block itself. Another thing I want to add when you're tracing your pieces, when you give yourself a little bit of room, go ahead and move just a skosh, trace your next piece, mark it, this is P3, and then scooch a little bit. So you just have like, I don't know if you can even see, I've got like maybe 1/4 of an inch between P2 and P3. That just gives me some cutting space because we are going to kind of rough cut our tracing pieces out, fuse them to the fabric, and then cut on the line when it's already fused to fabric. So give yourself some space so you can cut these pieces apart, because not every piece, even if it's next to each other, are going to be the same color of fabric. So just make sure you're able to cut around all of these pieces without cutting on the line so we can get them transferred to a piece of fabric. Okay, so we've got our template traced onto our seam all labeled. And then what we're going to do is take our scissors of choice. It can be a good pair of scissors. I'm going to use my Karen K. Buckley scissors. If you want to use your paper scissors, you can. However, you're going to have to cut through your fabric with this on it anyways, and I'll show you at the end a tip how to clean your scissors so they stay sharp and stay nice. So what we're going to do is we're just going to rough cut all of these pieces that we just traced off my big old chunk of seam. Get this big old piece out of the way. And then we're going to do the same thing, and we're going to rough cut up all of these pieces. Rough cutting, what I'm saying is just cut around your pieces. Let me cut this around and you'll see what I mean. So that you have something that looks like this. So you can see prominently where my pencil line is. This is piece D3. Just cut around it because we're going to fuse this whole piece to our fabric that the pattern is going to tell us what to do. So we're going to rough cut off all of these pieces that we just did. As you are cutting these pieces apart, go ahead and put them in piles with the matching alphabet. So like this is an M piece, also an M pile. This is P, this is P, O, D, another P, and a I. So go ahead and label them and categorize them in their own little piles. The P, the M, the D, they all represent a different piece of fabric, so that when we get that fabric, we can put all of our pieces on there, fuse them all at once, and not have to come back and forth, back and forth. So instead of keeping the flowers together, separate them all. We'll get to putting all the flowers back in just a minute. Alright, so I got all of my pieces traced, rough cut out, organized by letters, and then they're here sitting on my ironing surface. The other thing we're going to need to grab is grab your block 1 or corresponding, whatever it matches your template. If your template pieces you were just tracing were block number 6, you need the corresponding paper instructions. Because what you'll see over here on the far side is fabric used for applique. All of these are the pieces that are going to correspond. You'll see this little letter right there. Those correspond to what we just drew. So these are all of the colors that we're going to use to create our applique. So by looking on our pattern over here, we can see that, let's just do this very first one. Up at the top is this cool little daisy guy. He is labeled letter G. So what we're going to do is we're going to lay him out on our pressing surface. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to put this on our ironing surface right side down. So there's the right side. It's going to go face down on our ironing surface. We're going to fuse our G pieces. So let's see, these. Just 3 little baby guys. Oh, 2 little baby guys. We're going to peel these apart. So what we're hoping for is this one smooth piece. That's just garbage. You've got a little sticky, rough piece here. And our tracing here. We're going to stick that on our fabric, making sure we don't hit any of the selvage. You can finger press that on. Take every piece that corresponds and make sure you got the sticky side down. When you have that, we're going to head and we're going to pop open our pressing sheet, our nonstick pressing sheet. We're going to open this guy up. And what he is going to do is he's going to ensure that the glue that's now kind of tacked between this paper and our fabric doesn't seep out and transfer to our iron. So we're just going to open this guy up, place it right over our fabric, grab our iron, and give it a quick little press. Move that out of the way. And then they are perfectly attached to that piece of fabric. And then, same thing, I'm just going to rough cut that out, and there are the G pieces fused to our fabric. And we're going to keep going through it. So we're going to put this aside for later because we're going to use him again, I'm sure. This next piece, this pretty little yellow mum print. This one says on our pattern that it is letter I. So again, we're going to put it right side down. Find our eye pieces, which are equally little. And we're going to stick it, making sure we're not hitting the selvage. Stick it on there. Peel the papers apart. Stick it on there. Get our pressing sheet. Put it over the top. Grab our iron. Give it a good press. Then we'll rough cut those out. Add it to our pile. Put this fabric aside for later. And then let's go ahead and grab our next piece. This guy on our pattern says he is letter T. So again, last time I'll show you and then I'll let you go. Right side down, find our T's right here. These get a little bigger. Again, separate, stick, separate, and stick. And then just stick them in here kind of like Tetris so that you can use the most of your pieces without having too much fabric waste. Also making sure that all of the stickiness is on the fabric. If any of it is overextended, this little bit will transfer to our pressing counter, and then you'll have this nice really sticky spot right there on your pressing table. And you do not want that, because that stick could also transfer to the pretty side of your fabric. So keep it all on the fabric. Once you have it all laid the way you want, if you want to move something, just peel it up, stick it a different direction. any way you want until you have it ironed. Once you have it ironed, it's pretty stuck. So keep that in mind. Pressing sheet, hot iron, give it a little press. And even though it is called steam-a-seam, you do not need to use steam to adhere your steam-a-seam to your fabric. Just a hot, dry iron, stick it on there for a second, and you're good to go. Rough cut that out, and there's your pieces. So we're going to do all of these. So I'm going to go through all of my fabric, making sure all of my pieces are onto a piece of fabric, and then we'll come back. I'm just going to show you this really, really fast. So I'm trying to peel one of my S pieces off, and you'll see while I am trying to get it unstuck, the sticky part wants to go to this blank piece, not the piece where my drawing is. You want the sticky stuff to be on the drawing side of your paper. So just go ahead and give it a re-stick, just finger with it, and then move it over and peel it up so it's transferring to where you have your drawing. So that this is just garbage and the piece with our drawing has the sticky and can stick right to our fabric. Okay, I've got everything fused to the wrong side of my pretty fabrics. Again, the pattern is telling me what fabric, so you can see G, I, J, K, all of those. These are the pieces that we used inside of our pieced block part. So again, trust your pattern. Your pattern is very, very well written. Alright, now that we have things fused, now we're going to do, I like to rough cut these apart. It just makes it really nice to transfer my tiny little pile to a nice cozy spot on the couch so I can watch a movie with Robert or the kids and still have my hands busy and not feel that I'm, playing hooky or should be going and doing something. So what we're going to do is we're going to now cut them out. So you can see on here, you can see the line maybe that we drew. You can definitely see it on yours. And you're just going to now cut right along that line. Still using those super sharp, again, I'm using my Karen K. Buckley scissors, your purple serrated ones, whatever you have, your favorite sharpest scissors that you own. You'll find very quickly which scissors are not sharp, and also what scissors are not sharp all the way to the point. I feel like with fusible applique, it's very important that your scissors are sharp from the very back to the very point. It makes just the cutting super, super easy, makes it really just glide through real nicely. So, and we're just going to keep on cutting. Again, I turn on a really good movie and I just sit here and cut. What you could do if you want to do all of your tracing, all of your fusing, and all of your cutting all at the same time, doing like an assembly line, what I would say is grab a little Ziploc bag, a little Tupperware, an oversized muffin tin, and just label them that all of this bag is block number 1. All of this bag is block number 2. Keep those separated individually. I think if you get those interjingled and intermingled, I think you'll have a really hard time getting those pieces re-separated to match for your block. Just make sure you keep them separated and then cut them all out at once. On a long car ride, if you're camping, you can do it in front of the campfire, but then go ahead and cut all of these apart. Once you have these all cut apart, I'll show you really, really fast how to get them laid out using the placement guide template that they gave you, and we'll get this all situated for you. Okay, now comes the fun part. So we've got the placement guide piece. It also again has that little box in there that represents the seam and the of your block. Using your light box, you can see these through the blocks you have pieced. So make sure you have the template placement guide, that corresponds with the block you are using. If for some reason your block's all shuffled up and you're putting a different applique on that block, not the end of the world. It's just going to be unique to you. So when you have, what you're supposed to do is take this, layer it under there, line up that line, and then, but through a light box you'll be able to see, because really up close I can see that K2 comes out this direction. You can see all of that. The other thing you can do, like probably what I'm going to do, is I'm not even going to use this really what it's meant for. I'm just going to use it as a guide to lay out my drawing. Same thing with my instruction page. I'm going to use this for my guide also, so that I make sure that if I'm looking for this piece, which represents as L1, I might not know what L1 is off the top of my head because I just cut out a bazillion pieces of applique. So this will help you decide which piece is what. So I'm going to keep both of these pieces just to my side here as reference, and now we're just going to lay things out. So again, I just have my scissors. I used just the lid to a Tupperware while I was cutting to keep everything contained. And I'm just going to start somewhere. So I'm going to dump these out. Can you kind of see my little pile over here? And here is L1, which we see is that big old flower, or excuse me, leaf. What we're going to do is we're going to peel it apart. We're going to take off the fabric from that piece of paper. And then what's going to happen is that glue is now transferred to the wrong side of this. This is now tacky. If for any reason, while you were cutting or at this point, if you want to re-adhere any of the paper, you can totally do that. It's totally up to you. And then we're going to go ahead and place, oh, I'm going to turn this around so it's right to me here. It'll make my life a little easier. And I'm just going to place this guy where I want him. So this looks about right to the picture. And a couple things you want to be aware of. One, make sure this is nice pressed. You don't necessarily have to starch it if you don't want to, but make sure he's nice, flat, pressed the way you want him. And then it'll make it easier to stick these guys on and also adhere these on. Also, keep in mind you're going to have another 1/4 inch seam allowance all the way around this block. So even if you want to spread out your flower so it's a little more voluminous or whatever you want, just keep in mind the closer you get to that edge, the more likely you're going to sew right through that and blunt that petal. So keep that in mind while you are positioning your appliques. But what's really nice, even with this piece, is you can totally see that it's not even supposed to go to the red if you don't want it to. And it's supposed to go as far over as we can. So I'm going to go a little bit more. I'll go up a little higher. It's kind of almost laying down. There we go. Works for me. Doesn't have to be perfect. This is my own little piece of artwork. I'm just using Jason's pattern as a nice little way to go. Alright, I'm going to go and finish. I'm going to look at this piece. I'm going to finish that leaf. This is its own little applique piece. He's called L2 because on my placement template I can see this piece is next. He's L2. He's going to be the same color of green because I can see right here. So I'm going to flip these and look for that L2. Here he is. We're going to separate those pieces and stick her down. And we're going to go kind of like that, it looks like. And then I'm going to do this other big leaf. From the picture, it looks like it's this J1. Perfect. Peel the paper off. Stick it down. There we go. So that's what we're going to keep doing. We're just going to keep layering our pieces, getting them all stuck on to create this beautiful flower and dragonfly artwork. Again, use your placement guide underneath. If you would like to, use your light box and you can totally see right where it's supposed to lay in. So we're going to do this and I'll be right back. Okay, so I've got everything situated where I kind of like it. You can kind of fuss a little bit. These can totally peel up and peel down. Once we hit it with an iron, they're almost semi-permanent, so it wouldn't be time to be arranging then. One thing I noticed when I was doing it, this little leaf to my little, or wing, excuse me, to my little dragonfly, he got a little like sharp. So I'm just going to go ahead and do some freeform cutting right here. Curve that a little bit so it's not so sharp there. And stick that bad boy back down. The leaves, I like the leaves. I like all of that. I'm going to smush these a little bit more for my flower. So you can fuss a little bit. I would suggest set your timer. Set your timer for like 10 minutes. That you can be fussing for 10 minutes, and when that timer goes off, that's what you get. So that you're not just all immersed in how this is supposed to lay out. So one thing you'll need to do is once you like it the way you like it, make sure everybody's stuck down. Make sure your 1/4 inch is okay. Like right here, can you guys see that? That's like exactly a 1/4 inch. So I'm going to actually My timer hasn't gone off yet. I'm gonna smush my little dragonfly tail up a little bit. Just a little bit more, so that I'm very clear away from my 1/4 inch seam. The other thing we do is we could move that whole thing up a little more. All 3 body pieces and the 4 wings. But I think I like it, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to plug my iron in real fast. Okay, while that's heating up, I'm going to grab my handy dandy little pressing sheet, lay it over the top. Make sure your product is already on your ironing surface, because we don't want to iron directly onto our cutting mat, because again, it will create some warping, and that warping will never ever go away. And then we're going to press. And just very gently, just move from spot to spot, add a little pressure, keep moving, get it all in there. And again, we're using a pressing sheet, so if any of the glue bits from the seam seep through the cut edges, we're not going to get it on our iron. Once you think you have everything down, remove your hot pressing sheet, and then I go over it just one more time, very bravely. Because again, I don't want anything sticky on my iron. Many of us have a very expensive iron, and that's the last thing we need to do, is get sticky stuff where it's not supposed to be. Alright, and I feel like everything's stuck down pretty well. Yeah, I think it is. Keep in mind, like this little guy, that little yellow center, that's a really small piece. And now what we need to do is we have to stitch down these applique pieces. So being fusible applique, what's going to happen is these are only permanent for a little bit, like maybe one washing, a whole lot of fondling, and then these will start to peel off. A little person could easily pick these off, and you would never find those pieces again. So you do have to stitch these down. You can stitch it down in a decorative stitch with your sewing machine. I tend to just do a nice straight stitch all the way around. You could do a blanket stitch. You can use monofilament thread. What I would suggest, and probably what I will do, is go ahead and use, this is just a 40 weight polyester. This is the Silky White from Isacord. What's really nice about the Silky White is it almost acts like monofilament. Anything 60 weight, 80 weight in your sewing machine will act more of a monofilament in a butter yellow or a bright white. It will blend in very nicely, and you won't even see the stitching. So if it's not perfectly straight or perfectly blind hem stitched, it won't even matter. But you will want to stitch this down. If you personally don't stitch it down, and again, tidbit, I would do it block by block. It's going to be a whole lot easier to manage this than the whole quilt. The other thing you can do is if you have a long arm quilter who is willing to stitch these down for you, that is great. That's 99% of the time. That's what I do with all of my fusible applique, is I stitch it down when I quilt my quilt. These smaller things, if you're worried about the small things, if this guy becomes to disappear, or you're not sure you really like him, or you're not cutting one more little 1/4 inch circle out for a center of a flower, you could turn these into a whole bunch of French knots if you wanted to. So keep that in mind. You can also do a little bit of hand embroidery if you really want to get super cool with it. And then that's all we're going to do. So this is the fusible applique technique. We're going to repeat this for all of the other 11 blocks, doing all of the tracing, all of the cutting, all of the positioning, and then you can start doing the stitching. I'll link below. Cindy has done a video before about how to do fusible applique, so you can see those, and then we will see you next month, and we will start putting these together. So I hope you had fun. We'll catch you next month. I can't wait to see what you're working on.
Thank you for watching our video. We invite you to leave a comment, hit the like button, or better yet, subscribe to our channel so you never miss an episode. You can also visit our Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, or Pinterest pages, or find all of those things and our online store at fabricpatch.net.